Asian Britain.
On digital radio and on your mobile. This is BBC Asian Network.
It is 11 a.m. Good morning to you. Coming up after 11, I'm going to be joined by consultant psychiatrist Dr Ramya Mohan, who is launching a project called CAPE, which aims to use creative arts such as music and dance to help tackle mental health problems. Dr Mohan also has a special insight into British Asians and mental health and how sometimes depression affects Asian people in different ways. I'll be chatting to her about that, and of course, if you have any questions for Dr Mohan about depression, anxiety or other mental health conditions, she is on hand to answer those questions. Now, this is quite often a taboo subject in the Asian community. We don't want to make it so. We want to get rid of that taboo, because if you feel as though you are suffering from depression or anxiety, postnatal depression for instance, then please do get in contact with us. It is exactly the same as having any kind of health issue. You would not be embarrassed to talk about diabetes, for instance, so please do not be embarrassed or feel as though you can't talk about depression, anxiety or other mental health conditions that you may have. 81869 is the text. Email Nihal at bbc.co.uk, or you can call us. You can remain anonymous, of course, if you wish to. 03459 440 445 is the number. And we'll have that conversation after the news with Bella Shah. It's 11:15. Good morning to you. Now, on this programme, we like to talk about issues around depression and mental health because, just like in many other communities, these are often regarded shamefully as taboos. People say, look, you've got a nice house and a nice car, what have you got to be depressed about? Not understanding this internal turmoil that is going on. And people feel isolated. They feel that they can't help, especially in a case of men, for instance. You're probably aware that suicide is the biggest killer of men under 40 in this country. But, and that being the extreme end, there are plenty of mental health issues that you may just feel as though, well, you're low today, or you just burst into tears without knowing about it. You can't get out of bed. You can't leave the room. And you think to yourself, well, why is this happening? Maybe if I just work through it, it'll be all right. But of course, if you had a physical illness, you wouldn't do that, would you? You would go and see a GP. You wouldn't perhaps feel that bothered about telling someone, oh, I'm going to go and get diabetes checked done. And you have to think of mental health issues in exactly the same way. And that's where we can lift that taboo and get people talking about how they feel and look at interventions to make sure that they feel better or that they can cope with everyday life and the things that life throws at us. Today, we're going to be talking to Dr Ramya Mohan, who's a consultant psychiatrist in London, who's going to be giving a talk at the Nehru Centre next week, combining her love for her job as a consultant psychiatrist with her love of music. She specialises in how creative arts can help people who have mental health conditions, including depression. And she is on hand today to answer any questions you may have about your own mental health, or indeed the mental health issues that others who you love, who are around you, may have, not knowing perhaps what question to ask that person who you feel may be on a downward spiral. So, if you're worried about someone in your family or indeed yourself, 81869 is the text. Email Nihal at bbc.co.uk, or you can give us a call on 03459 440 445. And of course, as always with these issues, if you wish to remain anonymous, you can do. Dr. Mohan, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Nihal. It's a pleasure to be here.
You've been a psychiatrist in London for a few years, and you've had many Asian patients in that time. What are the common themes you see? Are there differences in the Asian community and the Asian community's attitude towards mental health issues, do you think?
Yes, there's quite a few issues that actually struck me when I was actually working in London. I trained in London. I work in Surrey now. And I worked in areas with high Asian populations in East London and South London. And if you look at it from the perspective of a mental health practitioner, at every stage of the process, there are always differences, and these differences struck me quite a bit, obviously being British Asian. So if you look at the time when they actually require a mental health service, that's the point when you realize that there's actually quite a difference in terms, even within one community, difference in terms of the awareness in that population. And when they actually overcome that and understand that, yes, we do require help, and they are able to access a service, which in itself can be quite difficult sometimes, because coming to terms with the fact that it might be a mental health problem, as you rightly said, can be quite difficult within the Asian community. So once they come to the stage of assessment, I think there are quite a few challenges there as well, because the way it can present, anxiety or depression can present within the Asian populations can be quite different, I observed. Because you take the example of depression, for example, your textbook definition of depression may not actually hold true, because it might be easier for you to express yourself through your body. So there might be bodily symptoms. So they might come to you with aches and pains or headaches or other difficult issues, for which there's no medical reason really. And it turns out they might be depressed. And again, you take the example of anxiety. They might start avoiding social events and situations which are such an important part of Asian culture, and as such it might actually perpetuate a cycle, because people might say, well, why isn't she here or there, it's a particular challenge. And you mentioned diabetes, and yes, people seek help for diabetes, but what sometimes we don't recognize is that there are mental health components to conditions such as diabetes and high blood pressure, which are so prevalent in Asian populations.
Right.
So, for example, I remember a child, when I was training, there was a child who was a juvenile diabetic. She got diagnosed with diabetes at a very early age. And despite everyone's efforts, she was not actually, her insulin control was really, really bad. And I think then you have to broaden your perspective, start thinking about why this is happening. And as it turned out, for her, it was almost a form of self-harm, because she was depressed. She was not actually able to express that in any other way. So she was actually taking it out on herself by not taking her insulin on time. This is just an example, but we have to be so much more careful at every step of the process. And once you get past that, you get to the stage of, yes, there is a diagnosis there, there's a mental illness there, and that brings with it a whole new scenario, really, because whilst the Asian communities, we're wonderful in the way we rally together, our community spirit and all that, the sense of community isolation that one can experience being mentally ill is also quite frightening. So that's something obviously you have to come to terms with. So at every stage of the process, really, I think...
Is there a feeling then, Dr. Mohan, that a mental illness cannot be treated? That physical illness, we know that science, medicine can deal with that, but that mental health issues can't be treated. Is there? Do you think that feeling? So perhaps it's prayer?
Yes.
Or there's jinns, or there's karma, and you have to deal with the culture and religion instead.
Absolutely. So people, obviously everyone has their own personal beliefs, and the way they approach management to a mental illness is different. And if it works for them, that's brilliant. But one also has to remember that there are certain mental illnesses that require medication, for example, that require therapeutic input, and that can be really, really difficult to get across sometimes. And that is where I think we need to work on. We need to work on awareness about the need for timely intervention in mental health, in mental illness, because without timely interventions, we might end up in the long term ending up with a worse prognosis, with a worse course of illness.
And there is also, of course, a generational issue here, isn't it? That now a younger generation are being encouraged to talk about their issues. An older generation, I mean, good grief, there isn't a Hindi word for depression. I mean, there's words like pagal, for instance, that people use most disparagingly.
Yeah.
But there is no terminology for any of this, is there? In Hindi or Urdu or Punjabi?
Yeah, that's a very relevant point. Yes, intergenerational differences are there, and one of the linked difficulties is language. So, for example, when I was working in East London in Tower Hamlets, language was a very big issue, and I found that, in fact, half the time when I was actually working with my children, young people, and families, I was actually talking to them in Hindi and Urdu rather than talk to them in English. And here I was working in London. So the language is a very big aspect, really. So that might actually, in many ways, it's one step away from actually ease of access into services, into mental health services. The younger generation, yes, they are able to, obviously they're more global in that sense, and they're able to overcome that. But that in itself brings a lot of, difficulties in terms of communication. Being British Asian, I was able to communicate. Sometimes we use interpreters. But these are all very real issues that actually face access to mental health services for, in different generations.
Well, music is an important part of what you believe can be done to help people who are suffering from these issues. And you record your own music.
I do.
So, and that forms part of the therapy. How have you seen that working? What effects has music had on people who have mental health issues?
Okay, it's a topic that's very close to my heart, and because I'm a performing musician myself, so I've been performing through the years, and I've always been interested in using music as a way of supporting mental illness. Not just to promote recovery in mental illness, but also to identify the healthy aspects of our thinking, to identify the healthy aspects of our brain, which can actually be supported in preventing mental illness from showing itself. So I've been quite interested in the topic. We did a research project looking at the impact of, we looked at what research was available really on music, and I looked at research on emotion in parallel as well, because as we all know, within Asian communities, let's face it, we are an expressive lot. So high expressed emotion is a very big component of our families and our culture. In comparison to, say, Western paradigms. So we looked at the impact of emotion and the impact of music on the brain. We looked at what studies were there. And there was something very, very interesting I discovered, because the same areas of the brain actually light up when you're processing emotion. The same areas of the brain light up when you're actually playing music, when you're admiring an artwork, mathematical proof. All these are actually perceived as rewarding and pleasurable. And then it got me thinking about why not use music as a way in, especially because music is such a big part of our culture, within Asian culture. It's an acceptable part of our culture. Why not use that as a way in to promote mental health? So that was kind of the basis for this new therapeutic technique, a conceptualized CAPE that you were mentioning earlier on. And of course, because a large part of it is about stigma and mental illness being managed by oneself behind closed doors and all that, I thought it would be actually quite helpful to look at it as a self-guided technique, something you can actually use in the privacy of your room, wherever you are. All you need is a pair of headphones to go, and then you're using music as a way of processing some very difficult emotions and dealing with them.
Well, let's listen to a piece of this music. It's called Molten Waves. Yeah. And this is you singing.
So that's me singing, yes.
Perfect. Well, let's listen to it. You listen to Nihal on the BBC Asian Network. Do get your questions into us if there are any mental health issues you want to talk about. 81869 on the text, email nihal@bbc.co.uk, or you can call us on 03459 440 445.
much.
Where can people get hold of that song if they want it?
Well, it's actually on YouTube. We released it on YouTube. This is more of a you can call it a psychiatrist's musings on love, really. My first foray into singing songwriting with the wonderful Ben Cochleus, and it's more of a kind of a mainstream fun kind of project I've taken on. Yes, so it's available on YouTube.
So people can go on YouTube and just put Molten Waves.
Molten Waves, and it's there for you to access. Yes.
So tell me about Cape, then.
So Cape is a different project I've been working on. It's called Creative Arts for the Processing of Emotions. And the basis for Cape was what I was talking to you earlier about, which is about using neuroscientific research to support our processing of emotions. So I realized that actually there is a lot of research on music, a lot of research on emotions, a lot of research on therapeutic techniques that are quite popular at the moment, mindfulness and quite a few other well-evidenced therapeutic techniques. But I think what struck me was that actually emotion isn't on a single modality. It's something that's dynamic, and it's something that needs to be targeted in a multimodal way. So I had an idea about actually bringing together music and well-known therapeutic techniques like mindfulness and cognitive behavioral therapy and guided imagery, amongst others, and putting them together to support emotional processing from more difficult emotions into more harmonic ones. And again, in a way that would be quite easy to use, so in the privacy of your own home or wherever, so it's self-guided. It's something that you can build up with practice. And again, with the idea of using music as a way in, I pulled together Indian classical music with Western contemporary music to make it more global in feel, and to make it more applicable really to present-day society. So there's a wonderful collaboration with Balu Raghuraman, who is he's a fantastic violinist, part of the Bharati Vidya Bhavan, with Dr. Nanda Kumara, who's the executive director of the Bharati Vidya Bhavan, Dr. Amal Lad, who's a GP and a musician. So we all got together, and we've come out with this technique, which we hope will be. I mean, it's been a very sincere effort, and it's been backed by neuroscientific research. So we really hope it would be something that would be really useful to our British Asian community.
Tell me about mindfulness. What is your definition of mindfulness? Because this seems to be a word that's around rather a lot
it's
at
quite
the moment.
a lot, yes, yeah. Absolutely.
And a lot in the press.
Very topical at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
So mindfulness, in very simplistic terms, the essence of mindfulness is about being in the moment. So being rather than doing. So it's quite difficult. It's not as simple as it sounds, and it takes a lot of dedication, commitment, and practice. So yeah, that's pretty much the essence of mindfulness in a nutshell.
Some people have described it as a trend, and that it's a very middle class thing. What is your response to that? The cynics about mindfulness.
I think there'd be cynics for everything, really. Certainly, from my own experience of mindfulness, and I practice mindfulness, and I'm also trained in it. And looking at the evidence base we have for it, which is increasing, I think it is something. It's not for everyone, I suppose, but to each his own. But for those who it does help, I think it helps quite a bit. But like any other therapeutic technique, it does require significant amount of dedication and practice, and I use it, and I found it incredibly useful.
How is it different to meditation?
How's it? It's got its roots in Eastern philosophy, from meditation and from Buddhist principles, but it kind of carries on from there to make it more applicable to situations involving health or healthcare, which is where my interest comes in.
Right.
So I suppose, meditation, you would say, it depends on what the definition of meditation is, which is different for everyone, really. But if we are talking about disciplined, self-guided, committed practice, consistent practice over a period of time, so you're training your mind to think a certain way and be more accepting of the situation and all that, then yes, mindfulness is incorporates principles of meditation as well.
So what practical applications does it have in terms of mental health issues? Because, they are serious issues. We have to be very wary, don't we? Because to the best of my knowledge, there isn't any peer-reviewed work that proves that mindfulness works, is there?
There is increasing research, certainly looking at the impact of mindfulness. Yes, there is.
But I guess what is that research saying about it, and whether that research is it neutral research? What are its parameters in order for us to feel confident that research isn't just actually more innuendo and
Yes, I mean,
because how do you prove it?
How do you prove it? I think the difficulty with any therapeutic modality is the qualitative nature, if you like, of studies. That's always going to be a difficulty. You can never. It's not like administering an ECG or administering a blood test, and what the results are. And that's the same for mental health as well. So as such, it's very difficult to prove, which is why there is a lot of emphasis on obviously you're looking at populations which actually are helped by this, and then you look at your clinical experience and you look at your individual kind of goals and see whether they're actually being supported by a practice like this.
But is there a big enough study? That's the problem.
There are a few studies, yes.
But are they big enough? That's the problem, because you need to see that it works across the board with hundreds, if not thousands, of people.
Yes.
And when you just mentioned the word population. There are no populations as such that have been gone through a mindfulness study.
And that's very difficult, of course. Doing population
So how big
studies.
a study is there big?
I think the reasonable studies, now I'll have to go back and kind of refer to numbers and things, but I was at this wonderful, interesting lecture talk given by a French professor at the European Psychiatric Association conference a couple of months ago, in March actually, and he put together this wonderful balanced argument for mindfulness that was actually quite impressive, and that was actually drawing upon
is he a practitioner
of absolutely, yes.
Right.
Absolutely.
So it's not balanced in that respect because he's already a practitioner, so you would find it odd for him to find an argument that would be against something that he already practices.
It was a very balanced overview from a scientific perspective, looking at existing studies and the results from them, and overall in terms of kind of the evidence really, or the supportive evidence. I think there is enough there to say that mindfulness is useful. It's useful for healthcare populations, and it's useful for people who basically just want to have a more healthy way of life. You don't have to have a mental illness for that.
No, quite.
Yeah.
Let's speak to Sonia, who's in Slough, who got in contact with us, not her real name, and a very good morning to you.
Hi, good morning, Nihal.
Now, you're calling really on behalf of your daughter, aren't you?
Yes.
So tell me, what would you like to ask?
Yes, my daughter, she's at uni, but she's having problem with anxiety and depression. And, I've been trying to talk to her. I said, just read spiritual books or yoga or, meditation. But she said nothing. Sometimes she feels like not getting up in the morning and very affecting her studies as well. So... And now recently she starts saying that, it was from the school days, like when she was doing GCSEs and A level, and the anxiety was there, always there, but she never said, and now I think it's, getting worse.
Is this something, though, is this purely down to studies, or is this down to something like bullying or some other issues that were going on, or was this the pressure of exams?
Yeah, no, she was never bullied, whether she was, that kind of personality like warrior all the time, but like she said, she's not enjoying the uni, and because of that, she's not, it's affecting her. Whether it's because of the anxiety, she's not, it's very. I think it's a combination of both, and it's getting down and down. And I said, speak to somebody at uni, the tutor, and she said there's not much help there.
Dr. Mohan?
I want to ask the guest, is there any help?
Yeah.
Or is there any I can help her?
How can Sonia help her daughter, Dr. Mohan?
How old is your daughter?
She's 20.
She's 20, okay. Have you accessed any help at all so far for your daughter?
I don't know, to be honest, and this is first time this has happened in family, and I don't know where to go for help, because I did speak to her, and I said, why don't you speak to somebody at uni? But, sometimes she's very negative, they don't help, and And I don't know how to approach the uni or...
Yeah.
Does she live out or does she live at home?
No, she lives out.
How far? Don't give me the city because we don't really wish her to be identified. But how far away in miles is she from you?
It's about 100 miles.
Oh right, okay. So she says
I
quite
don't mind going there. Or
No, of course you don't. It's your
somebody,
daughter.
Does she recognize she needs help?
Yeah, she does say that. She said, someday she's worried, like I don't want to get up or go to the lecture or,
Do you have a local GP
We have a local GP, yes.
that she used when she was growing up that you took?
Yes.
Right, okay.
Because before she went to uni, I think she was a bit, like she wasn't happy about the course. So we did speak to her. She did go and see the GP, and she said it was anxiety. I think like every child would experience because they're moving out.
Does she have a GP linked to her university now?
Yes, she has. Yes.
She has. And has she approached this GP?
No, that's what she's been saying. That no, they don't really help.
Right.
It's very difficult.
Sorry, just to be clear, has she been and they don't help, or has she not been because she thinks they're not going to help?
She has been there. She said, yeah.
Right.
Been there.
And what advice was she given when she went there?
She was given that she's got anxiety problem, and that leads to depression. And she said if she wants to take antidepressant tablets, and she said if she can help, if she doesn't want to, take the tablets.
So she didn't start on the antidepressants.
No, she didn't.
Right. Okay. So it sounds like to an extent she's aware she has a difficulty, but she's struggling to access help for that. Either way, how's the pastoral care at the university? Because they have college counsellors and pastoral care services, which are actually pretty good. Usually, has she had a chance to speak to someone there?
Well, she said she spoke to somebody once, but it wasn't very helpful. And whether she's being negative, because when I tried to talk to her, she said, "Oh, they don't help." So it's very difficult to talk to her. I said, "Why? If you don't talk, how do you get the help?" Yes.
And sometimes medication in itself can be a way of supporting access to psychological work. So it might not be a bad idea if that's what your GP has suggested to go back to the GP and consider that, because she might to an extent be able to recognize she needs help, but she's not actually able to access that at all from the sounds of it.
Yeah.
So if she could be supported to go back to her GP, because in terms of kind of the way the healthcare system is set up, the help can be accessed through your GP or a referral can be made through the university pastoral care or support system as well. So education can make a referral as well to mental health services, but it might not meet the threshold. So your best bet is actually to go back to the GP and reconsider the decision really about and see how that could be supported really if that's what she needs.
Okay, so will they refer for the counselling? GP, can they refer for counselling?
Absolutely. And there are services, obviously I'm not sure which region she's in, and obviously services vary from region to region, but there are services like IAPT which actually promote rapid access to psychological therapies. So
sorry, how do you spell that?
It's IAPT. Again, I'm not sure if it's a regional thing, so it's probably best for you to go back to your GP and see what local services are available in the area.
Okay.
But yes, she should be able to access counselling services through the GP as well.
Okay, because she's agreed. I said, look, when you come back home, and I can arrange for counselling in this area. I spoke to my neighbor, and she knows someone. So and she agreed for the counselling. So I can in West London, near Slough. So I can get the counselling through my GP, is it?
Absolutely. I would say go back to your GP, have a discussion about the options available in the area, and obviously if she is in university for quite a long period, during term time she's going to be there, it would make sense for it to be a local service. But of course you need to make sure that she's supported in that. You need to have a discussion about how best she can be supported when she's actually on treatment. So that might be a conversation you might need to have with the GP collectively.
Okay then, yeah, thanks for that. Sorry, one more thing. How about the antidepressant tablets? Are they very
addictive?
Yeah, addictive, yes. Yeah, that's the word, sorry.
Well, that was a question I was going to ask as well. I think people hear the word antidepressant and they suddenly think addiction, and they think that they will be on these things for life. Now, that may have been the case some years ago, I'm not sure, but can you reassure us, or can you give us what is the latest on
Yes.
antidepressants?
Yeah, so no, antidepressants are not addictive in the sense that they're not like drugs in that sense. But obviously, medication is something that you're introducing into the body. Your system takes time to get used to it, and then it stays in your system for a period of time. So if a body is getting used to something and it stays in your system for a while, suddenly if you stop that, of course the body is going to get a shock. So it's really important that any changes in medication are actually done under a very, very careful supervision with a specialist or your GP, and it's done in a graded way. That's the important bit. So with antidepressants, you can't play with them in the sense that it's not a drug that you can take one day and not take another day. You have to be regular with taking it, and also you have to be very, very carefully weaned off it. So in that sense, it is something that requires a lot of commitment. But in the sense of is it something addictive? No, it's not something that the body craves, because the definition of addiction is that is about craving. So it's a totally different mechanism.
Okay, yeah. Thanks a lot for your help, yeah. And
You're very welcome.
My GP and ask her to. Yeah.
And remember as well, if you're not satisfied with your GP, then you can ask. You're well within your rights to ask for another GP. Okay, so you don't have to stick to the GP. If you don't feel as though that GP is giving you the service that you require, then you are well within your rights to move to another GP.
Another GP. Oh, okay then, yeah.
Okay.
All the best.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thanks, Nihal. Yeah.
Take care. Let's speak now to Samina. Again, not her real name. Samina, good morning.
Good morning.
What would you like to ask Dr. Mohan?
It's really just about a bit of frustration, really, to get some help, really, because my nephew, my brother's son, he, in his teenage, he started suffering from sort of symptoms of what was not diagnosed as schizophrenia then. But later on, when his mom passed away, it became very evident that he has got some sort of a problem. And he did seclude himself, used to stay in his bedroom, and not talk to anybody. And, so he did get behavioral problems, and it was not discussed in the family at all. As you know, in our communities, we don't talk about mental illness. It's considered to be probably an embarrassment, or I don't know, but very sad that, it has to go really far before it becomes obvious to the others as well, to the relatives that there is something wrong. What my concern now is that my brother, who himself is aging, he's in his late 60s, and is not keeping in very good health himself, is looking after this son. And he worries that if anything happens to him, what will happen to his son. And he has tried to seek help from the GP, from authorities. He wants this son to be taken care of, but nothing's happening. Hello?
Yes, no, we're here. So this is very difficult, Dr. Mohan.
I was just wondering. So is your nephew linked to mental health services?
Yes, he. Some time back, when things came to a head, I think there was a violent episode or something, and the police had to be called in, and he was taken. And I think he was sectioned at the time as well, and he is on a depot now, a regular depot. But what my concern is that he is a difficult one to manage. He's at home. He can become quite aggressive to the point that sometimes, my brother can feel very scared as well. But he tries to, he is a calm sort of a person, and he tries to always pacify the situation. And he is coping with him, but I can see that he is really struggling, and he wants. I mean, very, very reluctantly, he has actually spoken to me and said that, he could do with help or whatever. But when I have tried to ring the mental health services or whatever, then obviously I'm an outsider. I can't do anything. When he himself, my brother's been to the GP and said, that I cannot cope. Nothing sort of, what he would really like is for his son to be put in a care home where he feels satisfied that he's being looked after, so that he can then have a life as well, because at the moment he doesn't have a life.
I mean, it's a difficult situation. What would be helpful to know is whether he's still linked into mental health services. So if he's on a depot, he would have a care coordinator, wouldn't he? He would have a care coordinator or somebody who'd be coordinating his care from a mental health perspective, from the mental health service?
What I have asked my brother, have you contacted the social service to say to take him away and all? He says they're not doing anything at all. His always response is that nobody is helping at all. They're not doing anything at all to take him away.
Yeah, it's
they feel that it's okay for him to keep staying at home with his dad, but his dad is finding it difficult to cope.
It's a bit tricky, really, because if he has a mental health issue, now how the mental health issue actually links up with the social care situation can be quite difficult. So if he's linked into a mental health service, they should be actually able to look at the difficulties with the current social situation, and if they need to liaise with social services, that's something they can do. And that might be the best way to go about it, because from what you're hearing, and of course I haven't met you, I just know what you've told me, but from what you're saying, it sounds like the mental health issue, the mental health difficulty is the main problem. And if it is okay, so if his mental health issue is having an impact on his social situation, and his dad is not in a position to be able to afford to take care of him any longer, but if he doesn't have enough independent skills or independent living skills or social skills to be able to function on his own, then that is an issue that will need to be discussed with the mental health service, because they would be in the best position to gain, if they need to liaise with social, sometimes social workers are part of mental health teams as well. It's best to have a comprehensive kind of discussion within the mental health system itself, because they would be able to suggest available options.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, I do feel that he has explored all options. He has tried to talk to the care coordinators. It is a bit sort of a bit of frustration, and that's why when I listened to your program this morning and you were talking about mental health issues, and I just thought that yes, it can eventually, in our Asian families, when it is exposed even, it becomes very difficult then to deal with it, because the help out there is so difficult to obtain. Things have to really go. Why are we waiting for him to do something ridiculous, to do something totally unacceptable before the police or the authorities step in, then to realize that he's got to be put somewhere? Why are we waiting for that? Why should something happen to my brother first before help can be?
What you're raising, yes. What you're raising is actually a question around risk. Now, if there is an issue of risk to himself or to others, then that becomes a very serious thing, and you can certainly take that back as a talking point. Take that back to your mental health service, to the care coordinator, and say, look, I'm really concerned about the risk levels here, because I believe that something terrible might happen. And you're well within your rights to ask for a second opinion within the NHS if you're not happy with what you're receiving, and you're entitled to that. And certainly, if you feel that a fresh pair of eyes could actually help pick up things or suggest things that have been missed, then that's certainly an avenue you could explore.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there.
Right.
Thank you very much. Omar from Bolton says, my dad suffers from long-term depression and anxiety. He's always focused on negativity and putting people down. It's heartbreaking, as there is nothing positive he ever says. He's housebound, rarely goes out. How can I help to change his outlook on life?
Gosh.
Wow. It's just long-term. I guess it's getting him to admit it.
Absolutely.
That there's a problem. It doesn't sound like he will admit that there's a problem.
Yeah, and that can be particularly difficult because it can be quite difficult trying to tease out how much of it is, a pattern that's kind of been ingrained over a period of time. How much of it is actually the mental illness?
Do psychiatrists, on the NHS, do home visits, or do you have to be referred and then you have to go to them?
We do home visits in exceptional circumstances, yes.
Right. But it's rare.
Yes, for capacity and logistical reasons. Yes,
yeah, of course. It's just interesting. Amar from Bolton. Where would Amar go? Because he's really obviously upset about his father, where his father's at, and a downward spiral his father is in. Where would Amar go in order to say, look, my dad, this is what's happening to him? Where can he go and be taken seriously?
Again, we're going back to your local GP or mental health service, really, because
mental health charity, you think could help?
Well, yes, definitely. I think the voluntary sector is increasingly becoming more and more of a source to go to, really. That's definitely there, and there are lots of voluntary agencies for anxiety and depression that one could access. But if he should be willing to go, and he should. It's a question of insight, I suppose. So whether he feels that he requires help, and sometimes it might be a question of supporting that, the understanding that help is required.
Firstly, thank you for bringing this up. Says this anonymous emailer. People should really not be scared for asking for help when they don't feel right. Mental health is such a taboo that Asians tend to blame it on nazar or black magic. What rubbish. I have a friend who is clearly not well and I wish I could help. Her family have tried everything to get her help, but they have all turned their backs. I'm pretty sure she has paranoid schizophrenia. All symptoms show, but the doctor will not do anything about it. I just wanted to say good on you for putting the message out there about mental health. It can be such a wide rate and type of mental illness. Well, I hope your friend, someone can do something about it. That's terrible, isn't it? The doctor will not do anything about it. We'll go and see another doctor. There are plenty of doctors out there. Dr. Mohan, thank you very much for coming in today. Where can people find out more about your work?
Thank you very much for having me. You can check out my website, www.ramyamohan.com, and it's got information about my work and the projects I do. And there is an impending exhibition coming up, and it's about the hidden and the expressed in the human mind. And this is my solo artwork. This is at the Nehru Center, and it's during Mental Health Awareness Week, the 16th to the 20th of May. So please do come along, check it out. And if you have any questions, I'd be very happy to answer you. You could contact me on my website.
Okay, Dr. Mohan, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
The sound of Asian Britain. On digital radio and on your mobile. This is BBC Asian Network.